Simon, chaos in the world of cricket. The fifth test, and a lot of people have travelled from all parts of the UK to get to Manchester for that. And of course now it's called off in the last hour and a half or so. I mean,
it's preposterous.
It's preposterous.
It's absolutely
not
preposterous.
Satisfactory at all.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the motivations, the landscape, the players themselves, the whole agenda needs to be examined very carefully. The idea that they can push back very quickly against any forfeiture, the idea that players that or backroom staff that get COVID will stop everyone, didn't stop Scotland when Billy Gilmore got it and the rest of those players. I'm sure that the protocols prevent these things. It's an outrage, and I think we all know where this leads. It leads to the loss of revenue for the players with the IPL, and it needs to be said and it needs to be called out, I think.
Sure. I think basically, Simon, there are accusations flying about between the authorities and the Indian camp as to, okay, what is the real reason for this going by the wayside? It's called off. The fifth test doesn't go ahead. A statement from the England and Wales Cricket Board says India are unable to field a team because of reasons COVID related. But is that the real reason? It's understood that during the course of yesterday, some members of the India team expressed their reluctance to play the match because of concerns about catching the virus and then being unable to fulfil their Indian Premier League contracts. So is that the real reason? Is it a reason of an IPL nature? It would seem possibly to be that. A short time ago, I spoke to the Daily Mail's cricket correspondent, Paul Newman, who put us right in the picture. This was Paul.
Well, it's a desperate situation, Jim, and the feeling is one of sadness and anger and all sorts of things, really. It's just it's a situation that should have been avoided. It's one that is showing contempt for the supporters, the people who were due at Old Trafford today, and it's one really that should have been avoided. Once the Indian players tested negative last night, I don't see any reason why they can't play the test match. That's been the rules all along. Negative tests, away you go. I know there have been some coaches affected, but they're in isolation. And it's just all about the IPL, I'm afraid. They're just trying to protect their players.
So reasons of health don't come into this, in your belief then, Paul?
Well, that would be harsh to say that, really, Jim. But what I would say is that they've been living, their lives all summer. They've been going about things in England for several weeks now. And the fact they don't want to play this match 5 days before they're due to get on a flight to Dubai to go to the IPL says everything to me. Obviously, health is a consideration, and obviously, COVID is a desperate thing. But the timing of it is all about to protect the franchise competition, and that's a desperate blow for Test cricket as much as anything else, as well as the contempt for the supporters. That's a huge blow for international cricket that they won't play in this Test match, even though they've tested negative. And really, it just leaves the game in disarray. It leaves the English season. It was a classic series. It was 2-1 to India. It was everything to play for here. And now we had 3 days of sellouts, and now we're not going to get a ball bowled. And I just think that's a tragedy for the game as much as anything else.
What would you say to those who'd say that the way, Paul, it comes over to me that you're pointing the finger of blame at the Indians is somewhat cynical?
I would say in response to that England left the tour of South Africa in December for similar reasons. When they distrusted the environment, they felt that COVID had breached their environment in Cape Town. But that led to the cancellation of 3 ODIs that were going to be played in front of empty houses because it was behind closed doors. Here you're letting down 150,000 people as much as anything else. So I'm not saying that it's all to blame on India, but I'm afraid the game can't afford this. At a time when Test cricket was hitting back and there was fantastic games going on, and now they're just walking away from this to protect a franchise competition, and that can't be right.
Paul, finally, who pays for all this, and what now happens to the series?
Well, that's the big question, Jim. The arguments are going on as we speak. Originally, when the ECB confirmed that the game was off, they put out a statement including the word forfeiture, that India had forfeited the match. They hastily withdrew that statement and said, no, the discussions are ongoing. So really, I think that's all about the money now. Who pays for this? What's the result of the series? Each Test match in England is worth around 30 million to the ECB in broadcasting revenue. Sky won't pay that money now. The BBC won't pay that money now for their radio rights. And then there's all the ticket holders who deserve a refund. So really, I think the argument now is who pays for this, and whether the BCCI and the ECB will thrash that out between themselves. But at the moment, we don't know if it's going to be a forfeiture. India are touring here next year in a white ball series. Maybe even then they'll play the test. I don't know. But I think it's going to be a long time today before we know exactly what's happening.
Well, we shall see. That was Paul Newman of the Daily Mail. Thanks to Paul for taking time out because the news had just broken and Paul kindly joined us earlier on. The big question, Simon, one of many is, who pays for this thing now? I mean, this was a classic series and now it's been thrown into absolute turmoil. What is the ultimate result of the series? What happens regards the TV rights? Did India indeed forfeit this match? So many unanswered questions. And of course, the small matter of this, thousands of ardent cricket fans had converged on the Northwest for this match today. And now this test match is not going ahead. The fifth test between England and India is called off. It is an almighty mess. John Norman, our cricket correspondent, is right in the thick of it. We'll join John after the short break. Our cricket correspondent, my talkSPORT colleague John Norman, joins us live. John, good morning. This is an almighty mess, is it not?
It is a huge mess, and behind the scenes there is plenty of fury that we are essentially 40 minutes before the original scheduled start of play. We've only found out the last hour and a half that a 5-day test match, 3 years in the planning, is not to take place. This is a story that is set to go on and on, but just to give you an idea, at 7 o'clock this morning, the England players are under the impression that the match would take place, or admittedly starting tomorrow, only to find out within an hour that the game had been cancelled. And we've had press releases suggesting the game has been forfeited, which have promptly been withdrawn. It's an absolute mess. It's a financial cost, a logistical cost, but there's also a political cost, and that's the one that will be interesting to see over the next couple of years or so.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Newman of the Daily Mail was saying to us, so many questions now to be answered, John. Did India forfeit the match? The TV rights, what happens there? Who pays for it? The result of the series, what ultimately will be the result of the series? But John, let me take you back. I'm looking in front of me. I have an article from The Guardian by Ali Martin. Thursday, the 20th of May. English cricket's relationship with India faces a potential fork in the road following an informal request to move the fifth test in September to the start of the series or cancel it altogether in order to complete the Indian Premier League. There was big concern as far back as May, John, and now it's reared its head.
Which is why there's a lot of suspicion about what has occurred over the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
Because questions have been asked. Hang on. Admittedly, a member of the coaching staff came down with COVID on Wednesday.
Right.
Much like before the fourth test match, the coach himself, Ravi Shastri, the fielding coach, the bowling coach, 4 members of the backroom staff tested positive for COVID the night before a test match that went ahead. Why, 7 days later, in an environment which has ticked every box in terms of being biosecure, in a world where none of the Indian players have tested positive, quite the opposite, they've all tested negative, why does the fact that another coaching member of the backroom staff testing positive, why has that led to this test match being cancelled? The other question I'll throw to you is, why is it that last night we were told officially that the test match would go ahead, only to find out this morning that wasn't the case? And I'll answer that question. The Indian players did not want to play. And I don't think that some key members with the Indian players, that is, 4 members of the Indian players did not want to play. They didn't want to play last night. And I put it to you that they'd made up their mind last night that this test match wasn't going to take place today.
I see, because this is about money, isn't it? Because they feared that they would be unable to fulfill their Indian Premier League contracts.
Well, money is at the heart of every single strain. Every single time you find yourself in a position, Jim, where you think, that's a bit of a strange thing to happen. Why has that happened? I'll put it to you that 90% of the time it's because somebody up the chain is making a lot of money. Money rules the world. Money rules cricket. And the BCCI hold all the power within world cricket. The IPL essentially runs cricket because it makes it the amount of money that will be lost at this test match. And to give you a few ideas of figures, got to work out who pays Sky, the £20 million they've spent to broadcast this. Star TV in India, they need to be paid off. There's insurance claims to be made against this test not taking place. So, there's going to be legalese there. But essentially, it comes down to money. And if the IPL wasn't taking place next week, then I believe this test match would be taking place.
Everybody will be out there, Simon.
Sure.
Nobody around to answer any questions. India will be off their mark.
Where's the governance, John? Who's got the ultimate governance? Is it the ICC?
Yeah, it's a joke. Yes. The ICC run world cricket, but they're an events company.
So can the ICC, if they're an events company, but if there's governance involved, can the ICC sanction these cricketers and say, in the event that you've pulled out of this because you want to patronise the IPL, we're not going to allow you to do that. We're going to sanction you and stop you from playing in the IPL.
No, essentially, because the ICC are beholden to the BCCI in much the same way as everybody else is. No,
in what way? In what way, John?
Because essentially, the BCCI in India, Indian cricket makes up 80% of the world's wealth in terms of cricket making revenue. What they say goes. So essentially, the ICC will have to hold back to see what the BCCI will allow them to say. What would be very interesting is. So essentially, the
ECB, we're just going to sit back. The ECB is going to sit back and allow the Board of Control for Cricket in India to dictate policy over how test matches manifest themselves in preference to the IPL because the wealth is generated.
No, because officially the Indian players and the Indian team will say that they could not safeguard their health. So that's why this test match is taking place.
But that argument falls apart if they fielded a side in the fourth test with their coach and their fielding coach testing positive, but the team still being fielded.
They will say, I imagine, that there was fears that the players and possibly they also mentioned their families' health. The families will be travelling with them. At no point.
But there's the same challenges. The same issues that would have manifested themselves in fielding a side for the fourth test, which they've won, which has now put them in an unassailable position if this test isn't played, which it isn't played. Yeah. So they've now won the series 2-1, if we're not going to get into territory of forfeiture, which seems ridiculous, John. Let me ask you a question about the relative value of this test. Is it possible, because we know that the test matches are insured and fifth days are insured by insurance companies, with a COVID landscape, would they have been able to insure this test match for the revenues?
This is where it comes down to the legalese, because it's the reason why this test match hasn't taken place. This is what I believe to be the case. It needs to be a forfeiture for the ECB to claim the insurance.
Right.
So that is key. The reasons for the forfeiture, if we go down that route, if that is the end game, what I imagine a week from today, we get a forfeiture, but no blame apportioned to India. That's what I imagine will happen.
You think that will be the likely outcome? John, I can tell you, and you won't be surprised to hear this, in front of me, cricket fans sending us messages here at talkSPORT this morning. They are livid. And they've made up their minds, John, what the reason is. Bryn and Walsall, the postponed test match this morning is simply down to money. And it's because of the IPL next week. Nothing else. This is a disgrace. Tony, I'm a big cricket fan. What we are seeing in cricket today, we are seeing in football as well. Money is corrupting this sport. John, they are livid. The fans are the lifeblood of the sport of cricket. What happens to them now? Do they get a full refund?
Again, it'll come down to the legalese of the insurance claim.
Gee.
It's all tied in. It's going to be a percentage of the gate receipts, a percentage of the beer sales, a percentage of the corporate, all tied in. Can the ECB claim the insurance?
But even if they can't, do the ECB really want to compound the issue? If the Indians have the audacity to currently argue the positioning of a forfeiture, I think you're probably right. The forfeiture is just a positioning statement. They're going to find it difficult to substantiate that because they're going to get pressure brought down to them on the economics of a game being cancelled with 90 minutes to go. But even if there weren't a situation where this argument rages on, can the ECB really, from a customer-facing point of view, say to the fans, we aren't able to control cricket, we aren't able to put test matches on because we're being governed by the BCCI in India, and the reality is you just pay your money and you take your chance. Is that what they want to say to their own fans?
Exactly.
Well, I imagine they don't want to say that to their own fans, but essentially they need to be in a position where they can actually turn round to their fans and offer them something. I don't. But look,
with or without forfeiture, John, I would advance.
Exactly. But look, we've just had a 2020, essentially, cricket like football, requested of its fans to essentially, from a club perspective, to pay their membership despite having no cricket to watch. Cricket's finances are perilous compared to football, so it's not quite as simple as just diverting cash towards the fans so you can say, look, we'll always have your back. The cricket has been hit financially to a huge degree. From a club perspective, even the money that they would get back from an insurance claim, I don't think will cover all of their losses. And then if you look at, we heard Chris Millard from the Barmy Army earlier, they're set to lose £20,000 from this test match alone. Now, that doesn't sound a particularly large amount of money, possibly when you're talking about 20 million for Sky, but £20,000, that pays for a member of staff for a year.
But won't this have to find its way into the ECB central contracts?
Well, the ECB central contracts are a completely different kettle of fish. They're not fit for purpose anyway. But
they are money, aren't they? They are the money that goes to the players.
Well, I think the whole thing's going to have to be looked at top to bottom, John, isn't it? Ironically, there's rain in Manchester at 11 o'clock and then more rain later in the afternoon.
In September,
So the whole darn thing would have been pretty much scuppered anyway on day one. John, thank you so much for joining us. John Norman there. He'll probably try and get answers to the many questions that are being asked this morning.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.